Here I am at Action Sports on the North Shore, and I am about to take a Cfmoto 450 MT for a ride.
I need to go fast, oh so fast, faster than the rest, I need to go fast, oh so fast, fast like lightning, oh yeah.
Welcome everyone to Biking with Campbell. On today's episode I am going to be reviewing the Cfmoto 450 MT, but before we jump into that I would just like to let you know what the format of this particular video is. The first part of the video is just my raw thoughts and feelings as they come to me as I ride the motorcycle. If you want a more thought out review with a little bit more time for me to kind of come to some conclusions, then check out my good, bad and ugly that's at the end of this. So don't be put off if you see it's like 30 minutes long. You don't have to watch the whole thing. Watch the beginning, watch the end, watch whatever you want. There's going to be chapters on it too. Oh, and one more thing before we get started. This video is not sponsored in any way, and I do not have any formal or informal relationship with Cfmoto. So all biases are purely my own. Let's get into it. Okay, ladies and gents, welcome to Biking with Campbell. I am on the Cfmoto 450 MT, or MT450? One of the ways, it's around one of those ways anyway. Yeah, and my initial impressions are this standing position's really nice, actually. The clutch is super light, like everybody says. Like you can one finger clutch this, no sweat. So you could, that's going to really help prevent that rider fatigue. When you're a little rider unfit and you're off road and you're using the clutch a lot. It is a tiny bit hard to feel where the take-up point is because of that light clutch, but my guess is if you owned it, it wouldn't be an issue after a while. You'd just get to know it and you'd kind of get to feel it. So I think that's kind of not really a problem, and I think mostly it's a bonus. Seat height wise, pretty low. You can get both feet flat on the ground. Even flat on the ground with a bit of slightly bent knee actually. The downside is there's not that much leg room. When you put your feet up on the pegs, you're a wee bit cramped. I'm 5'10", so just so you know what my height is, I think my inseam's 32. But they do a higher seat for this, so you could do that, or it's not very expensive to just get your seat reupholstered by a local company. Now the throttle's a bit snatchy, and that's being exacerbated by the fact that there's a little bit of looseness in this throttle, but that's just about adjusting the cable, and most of the time bike shops will have them adjusted so there's a little bit of play in them. But if you want to get rid of that, or rid of some of that snatchiness from off throttle, that's a good way to do it. At 50 k's, it's yep, no problems, pulls away smoothly in fifth, not strongly but smoothly. What about 66? What about sixth gear at 50? It's interesting. It doesn't really feel like it's lugging at all. It just sort of slowly gets on with it. So that's quite nice if you're a newer rider, which is the sort of person that's going to probably be interested in this. Just having that ability to not worry about if you're in exactly the right gear or not. It's interesting that most journalists have said they were quite surprised by the motor in regards to, I guess, it just having a bit more go than they thought it might. I'm kind of surprised in the other direction. When I rode that Moto Morini, that's also supposedly only got 47 horsepower, and that felt considerably faster than this. that was overtaking in 6. I just wound that on up the hill. Well, it's pretty good actually. It's pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's not fast, but that's fast enough, right? At that pace. So we were doing, I don't know what we're doing up there. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing up here actually. Gotta be a little bit careful with the speed camera. And I don't want a ticket. The clocks are nice, easy to read. Some of the other information is a little bit on the small side, so speed and gear is nice and clear, but some of those other things are a bit small. But if you're not an old git like me and your eyesight's alright, probably be fine. Suspension's a bit bouncy, it's a bit choppy up and down over this stuff. It is adjustable, so you can probably soften it up, and I think I would be. It's probably going to be quite interesting on the gravel, because that gravel road is bumpy. This road's somewhat smooth and it feels bumpy. Yeah, the brakes are really set up for beginners. Just really not much happens when you squeeze the lever. I think I'd be putting in a different set of pads as soon as I could, unless I was a beginner, because yeah, there's just not much aggression when you pull that lever, and just not enough happens. Oh, I mean, it's fun. It's not fast, but it's entertaining. It doesn't feel much slower than a desert sled. Not that that's high praise. I rode the desert sled. I couldn't wait to get back on my DR650. The desert sled was so boring. I like how readable the rev counter is. So I mean, usually digital rev counters are just awful. Like as in pointless. The LCD one on my Africa Twin is just a joke. It just serves no purpose at all. I think the gravel road's up here somewhere, just around this, pretty much sure it's just around this next corner. Oh, here we go. Hey, she's pretty bumpy here, Trev. This isn't really a gravel road because there's no loose gravel on this at all. Actually, I'll tell you what, the suspension feels pretty good on this. Interesting. Feels too hard on the road, but feels pretty good now. Or maybe not there. It feels pretty fun too on this. So a little bit slow on the road. Sorry, I'm shouting. It's a little bit slow on the road, but way! It feels a lot of fun on this. I think if this was going to be your first adventure bike, oh, you'd be mad not to get a bike like this for your first bike. Absolutely crazy. It's a really nice looking bike. Fit and finish looks pretty good. Obviously it's new, but so it'll be interesting to see what it looks like in 10,000, 20,000 Ks, but as it stands. Now, what's it like when you lock this back brake up? Like that. The other thing is I haven't tested this front brake yet. The forks are, the whole front is, I don't want to say wooden, but, oh yeah, there I see the ABS coming in. Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Oh, it's perfect for this. Perfect. Yeah, you can pull it pretty fast. I wonder what it's like in loose gravel. I'd love to know. It's a little bit on the side of the road. Let's have a go at not too silly a speed. See what that's like. Oh yeah, I see. Oh dear. Oh, if you're in the loose stuff, it just stops working basically. Oh, at least you're not going to fall off. Well, you're not going to tuck the front. That's for real. So oh dear. Oh yeah, a little bit of a skiddy. What motorcycle would be complete if it couldn't do a little bit of a skiddy? So here's a little tip off. I was very, very polite in my review on the Desert X. Probably a little too polite. I could not wait to get that thing back to the shop. If I got told that I could have this for a week, I'd be over the moon. Even another few hours, another few meters, it's just like, you definitely want to keep riding this. Way bouncy, bouncy. Alright, I better turn around and go back. I don't want to turn around and go back, because I'm having way too much fun, but... Okay, so let's look at who this is targeted at, because it's not targeted at me. I'm always looking for something different. You know, I guess what I hoped was that this was making similar power to the Moto Morini. Obviously this will be making a lot less torque, and I think that's the thing that's probably hitting me. But and it actually goes to show how much of a lie horsepower figures are, because horsepower wise this is basically the same horsepower as the Moto Morini. Not sure what the torque figures are like. I'll put them here somewhere and see how the torque figures compare. But this feels way less powerful, and I thought it would feel quicker. It's not nearly as quick as that Moto Morini, and it's arguably 40 kilos lighter. And what they used to say in racing circles is 3 kilos was equivalent to a horsepower. So you do the math there. That means that this should feel like it's, I don't know, like 10 to 12 horsepower more than a Moto Morini. I'm talking about the Escape here. And it really does not. It really doesn't. And that Moto Morini is a very good bike, by the way. So anyway, so I was saying, I don't really think this bike's aimed at me. So I was hoping, yeah, that was a long story. See, ADHD. I was hoping that, you know, maybe this would, you know, feel quite quick compared to the Moto Morini, and then like potentially you'd have a really exciting bike. But yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't, and the Moto Morini felt too slow for me. But anyway, let's go back and like look at who this is aimed at. So this is aimed at learners, right? It's a restricted motor, set up to be a learner legal bike around the world in different locations, including New Zealand obviously, and which means you can obviously ride this bike straight away on your learner's license, and as a learner bike it's really compelling. Like, you know, you've seen adventure bikes, you really like the idea of adventure bike riding, you'd like to give it a little go and do some gravel roads, and this bike is mint for that, and it's got so many good features on it. I'm not a fan of electronics, but at least with this it's a one push and the traction control and the rear ABS is off. So if you want to muck about with, you know, skidding the back wheel under brakes or trying to skid it under power, you know, it's not going to frighten you, that's for real. And then you've got the ABS at the front. I'd say the only place the ABS is going to fall down is if you take this properly off-road. If you take this properly off-road and you're in very slippery conditions, you're not going to have any front brakes at all, like none. And you might think, oh, I can just slow myself down with a rear brake, but yeah, you can't. You really need that front brake. A back brake's going to do nothing for you as far as like slowing down goes. Most of your braking force
on-road and off-road is predominantly it's your front brake. That looks quite... Well, that would be pretty easy to ride on. I hope I don't regret this. I guess this is not exactly off-road, but oh, and there's the ABS kicking in, and that's a problem right there. I might just go through this super slow. Try not to splash any mud up anywhere. I mean, that's quite good, and actually that shows how good that actually you will get used to the super light clutch, because you know, potentially that could have made things tricky, but it didn't. I could really eke out the power very, very gently so as to not spin that wheel at all. But yeah, that ABS, you need to figure out how you're going to completely disable it, because that will be a problem. Oh, here we go. Let's see if I can not lock it up down here. Oh yeah. I wonder if it would improve if you had really knobbly tyres on it that were kind of quite grippy off-road, whether that would help. Final thoughts. It's a great little bike. It's well decked out. It's really inexpensive. The suspension feels a wee bit harsh on road, but really comes alive off-road, which seems to work pretty well. I would probably still soften it up just the tiniest little bit. If you're taller, you might want the high seat. If you're shorter, that's quite good. It's not terribly huge reach to the ground. If you are a new rider and you want to have a bit of confidence in your bike and know that it's going to be fast enough one up to go touring, you've got that. I'm sure it'll be an amazing commuter bike. It's got a really beautifully light clutch that's really easy to modulate, as I just proved back there. I think the tyres that it comes on are alright. They seem to be working okay on gravel, and they're right in those little slippery conditions there. No, I wasn't going hard, but if you're a learner rider, you ain't going to be going hard either, so that's okay. Seemed to work alright on road. Doesn't feel like it particularly wants to fall into corners, but having said that, it might just be handling a little more like a road bike. So if you're coming off a road bike and this is your second bike, and you're sort of you know, a learner that doesn't want to jump into anything too crazy, you want to do some gravel, you know, go touring, and you know, venture a little bit into the adventure world, and maybe do a tiny bit of, you know, easy off-road, and yeah, it's going to be good for that. And then you've got that thing of coming off a road bike and just not feeling totally alien. Probably, maybe the sitting position might, but it's, you know, it's comfortable because you're very sit up, you're not bent all over the bars, and if you're young, you probably don't care about that too much, but yep, if you're older and just getting into bikes, you're probably going to enjoy that. Anyway, that's pretty much us, I think, peeps.
So there were my initial impressions on my first ride on the 450 MT. Now, all the specs I'm going to put here. I'm not going to go over them. You can watch 1,000,001 reviews that are going to tell you what the specs are. And it's not something that matters to me that much. I'm just way more interested in how the bike actually rides and performs. So with that in mind, let's get into the good. So the first great thing about this is obviously it's offering incredible value for money at just under $10,000 New Zealand. it's really hard to beat. I think this is a fantastic looking motorcycle. That's obviously up to interpretation and opinion, but I think it's got a bit of that nice rally vibe that everyone seems to like at the moment. It has really good fit and finish. The paint's really nice. I had a good look at the welding. There's no splatter. The welds are really clean. And yeah, obviously this bike's very new, so we don't know what it's going to look like in 20,000 miles or how it's going to look when it's been sitting out in your driveway for 2 years, like my poor Africa Twin has. The next small thing is part of those features is the tyres that it comes on. They're an unknown brand. They look a little bit like Scorpion STR Rallies, but I found them to be good on the road. No problems with them. They seem to stick okay, steer okay. They're alright off-road, they're alright on the gravel, and I don't think it's something you're going to need to spend money on straight away. Just use them, and who knows, if you like them, see if you can get hold of another set. The handling on the bike is really good. It's very stable. And I think that's going to be really good for who it's aimed at, which is the learner riders. I would have liked it to steer a little bit more quickly, but I mean, it's a very light bike, and so you can just throw it around if you really want to. Talking about handling, the suspension is really very good. It does seem a little bit harsh on the road, but remember that this bike is fully adjustable, and so you can soften it up if you want to. And I think it's crazy to say it's too harsh, because you can always back the compression damping off, and we're always complaining when these new bikes come out that the suspension is way too soft. So at least this gives us a good starting point where we can soften it up if we want to, which is amazing at this price point. In fact, if you look at bikes that are significantly more expensive, the Transalp, for example, is $20,000 in New Zealand, and that doesn't have adjustable suspension. It does work really well in the gravel as the pace hottens up and you start to hit undulations and potholes and things. It is really good. I'd say the limiting factor on the suspension is if you're hitting corrugations and hollows at the same time, it's going to get a bit overwhelmed. My Africa Twin, I think the suspension on that is very good quality, but it too gets overwhelmed, especially through undulations. It can start to tie itself in knots. So I think the Mt450 is another great thing about the 450 MT is that it is immediately confidence inspiring. Everything falls to hand really well. It's a pretty comfortable bike. The standing position on it is really excellent, and you just feel really good and safe on it straight away, which if you're a less experienced rider, that's going to be great because it's going to give you that confidence as a new rider. And if you're a really experienced rider, it's going to enable you to go fast very quickly. That just shows that it's just one of those bikes that's really right straight out of the gate. I think the instrument panel's great. It's a really bright, beautifully laid out LCD. You've got the rev counter, which is really easy to see, the speed, which is really easy to see, a gear indicator, once again, great for noobs. A lot of the other stuff is problematic, like you're not going to be able to read that unless your eyesight is really good. Like for example, I really wanted to know what the time was so I would get this bike back late to the dealer, and I was lamenting the fact that it didn't have a clock, and as it turns out it does have a clock. It's just you can't see it without glasses if you're an old fella like me. And I think a clock is key, and also like a really decently sized odometer, because those are the sorts of things that are really useful, especially adventure riding or touring. It's got one of my all-time favorite features, and that is it's got a cable operated throttle. No ridiculous ride-by-wire throttle here. It's just you and the throttle and the motor and the back wheel, and you're connected and you can tell what the heck's going on. The clutch, which lots of journos have talked about, which is extremely light, is really great because it's going to be less fatiguing, especially off-road when you're using it all the time. You can actuate it with one finger. It's a piece of cake. A lot of the reviewers said, oh, you know, it's hard to tell where the pickup point is and that sort of thing, but I seriously think that's the kind of problem you're going to have with it for the first 30 minutes of owning it, and then it's going to never ever be something that enters your head ever again. I just think it's all upsides with that clutch, and it's just win-win. Nice one, Cfmoto. One of the obvious things that we really are wanting in some of these new bikes is lightweight. Now this bike isn't particularly lightweight, and that is kind of disappointing. There's lots of people saying it's all sorts of different weights online, but I think we can safely say that this bike is probably around the 190 kilo mark, maybe 192, something like that. So it is lighter than a lot of other stuff. It's 40 kilos lighter than my Africa Twin, for example, and it feels it. You know, it feels light. Doesn't feel like a big, overwhelming motorcycle. That, paired with the low seat height, if you're a noob, is just going to add to that overall confidence, that overall manageability on the road, pulling it up at lights, as well as off-road on a bit of uneven terrain where you dab a foot down, and it's just really nice to not have that big reach to the ground. So, that's all of the good. Let's look at the bad. First of all, let's talk about that throttle. Great that it's a cable, but it is incredibly snatchy from closed. Now, I don't think this is a particular thing around Cfmoto. It's a problem around the emissions laws, trying to get these things into the different countries with the different emissions laws. That means that they have to be run really, really lean, and that's why you get those really snatchy throttles. Now, bear in mind, this thing's only making like 43 horsepower-ish, so it's not the sort of thing that's going to be like, whoa, I've lost control, it's like, oh, it's taken off. It's just, it isn't powerful enough to be an issue. Obviously, if you're a brand new rider and this is your first bike, you might feel a little bit differently about that. The lack of horsepower. I think if you're a noob, it's going to be fine. It's got enough power that you're going to be able to tour on it. You can overtake traffic, etc. But if you're a more experienced rider that was like hoping for a quick bike with low weight, this isn't it. I think that's okay because we need these learner legal bikes to meet the market needs around the world. But it would be great if the manufacturers could just bring out a more sporty, full-powered version of these bikes, and I just think that would open up the market to, you know, older riders who are looking to downsize, or people who just want performance in a smaller package. Powder weight is king. Another thing that might be a bit of an issue is the cramped riding position. Now, it's fantastic standing up for my 5'10" frame, but sitting down, I even noticed that there wasn't enough leg room. Having said that, Cfmoto does a high seat option, or a high seat that you can purchase, so that's going to fix that, and it's possible that, you know, it may be possible to lower those foot pegs with some hangers and just give yourself a little bit more space that way. Time will tell what solutions people come up with, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. It's got this fantastic adjustable screen which you can easily adjust on the fly, except it does bugger all, regardless of what height it's in. I put it in the low position on the highway, I put it in the high position, and to be perfectly frank, I could not tell the difference. Now, bear in mind, it has as much wind protection as my Africa Twin does. It didn't particularly bother me. It's not like my head was being horribly buffeted. So I think, you know, I don't think it's an issue. And I'm sure that aftermarket and even maybe Cfmoto themselves will come out with a bigger touring screen, and then having that adjustability on the fly with a bigger screen is probably going to be really good. So once again, not a deal breaker. So that's all I've got to say about the bad. Now, what about the ugly? My main complaint with this bike is it's just too slow. In fifth gear, you're going to be getting about 135 kilometers an hour out of this bike, absolutely pinned. And in sixth gear, I can't imagine you're going to get much over 145. Now, that's not a big problem if you live in New Zealand, where generally we're sitting between 90 k's and 110, and in sixth gear it's probably going to do that all day long without too much effort. But if you live in Europe or the States and you're riding on some of those big autobahns or interstates where, you know, people are regularly doing 75 miles per hour plus, I think it's going to start to struggle. So if you do live in one of those places, I still think it's a great bike, but you're really going to want to stay off those interstates and just take the back roads, the windy back roads, which let's face it, is a lot more fun on a motorcycle anyway. But being that slow is, I think, really pitiful and unforgivable. My DRZ 400 did 159 kilometers flat out. And I also think that it'll quite possibly actually accelerate faster, as would a DR650. A DR650 probably on the lower gearing so you can take it off-road, might be just slightly slower by a few kilometers an hour at the very top end. But yeah, it's going to get there much, much faster. So I think that's really disappointing because, you know, the DRZ 400 is something like, 15 to 20 years old, and the DR650 is like 30 years old. It's like, what has happened to performance with motorcycles? They are just getting slower and slower and heavier and heavier. They're all guilty of it. At least with Cfmoto, they're making an effort here to make a motorcycle that's great for beginners, that maybe is a bit lighter than some of those really heavy bikes. It's just, you know, it would be good to like have a lot more power or less weight or some kind of combination of the two. Overall, even with that criticism that you shouldn't really aim too much at Cfmoto itself, I think we should really be excited about what the Chinese manufacturers are bringing to the market. They are major industry disruptors. They are bringing us really increasingly excellent motorcycles with increasingly good performance for low prices. The ABS. It's as crude as f***. It just really does not work very well, except in very, very dry, sticky conditions where you wouldn't need ABS. Now, whilst it does have a really awesome bar mounted dedicated switch that you can just switch off the ABS on the fly, for it to really be good, it needs to be able to turn that ABS on the front and on the rear. Just turning off the rear is pretty much a waste of time. Overall, I think this is one of the best motorcycles to possibly come out in the last 15 to 20 years. It is great value for money, and it has that really good, feel-good sort of vibe. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think you would have to be an absolute mug not to consider buying this, especially if you are a new rider. Whether you want to commute on it, tour on it, do some adventure riding on it, I think there's going to be nothing better in the market. You might want to look at the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, and I do hope to test that soon and get a review out to you guys, but I think this bike is sitting kind of in a niche of its own at the moment. Well, that's all, folks. If you're still with me, thanks very much. I know that was quite a long one, but hopefully you have got the information that you want out of that. Please remember to like, subscribe, share with your friends, and remember, everybody, God bless, and ride fast and take chances. Biking with Campbell. Bye. Okay, we'll see you later. You can go now. Thanks for coming. See you all later. Come back again, you all here. Cheers.